Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Hail Yes, a Detroit Free Press podcast about University of Michigan athletics. I'm Tony Garcia, Michigan football and basketball writer for The Free, joined as always by our producer and editor, Andrew Burkle, who we need to check in on now more than ever. We are T-minus 19 days as we record to your wedding, Andrew? How are the nerves doing? We need a human check-in before we get to the rest of the good stuff.
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't really feeling the heat too much, but then when I saw the calendar turn to April, like the same month as the wedding, I was like, it literally, I had like a guttural reaction. It hit me in the stomach. I was like, oh, okay, things are getting real now. So yeah, I'm getting married the 26th of April there. So you'll be in attendance. So will some other Freepsters. So I can't wait. I'm really excited. We're actually, when you look back at all the things we have done, you're like, okay, we've been very productive, but in the big picture, but in the day to day, it still feels like a lot's going on. So pardon me if I'm a little scrambled brain, but we'll get through it, and a nice break to talk some sports with the friend here.
Yes, no, good. That's what we're here to do, but not to add pressure. It is not about how you start. It's about how you finish. This is the home stretch, and I know your fiance, and she will take nothing less than perfection over the next 3 weeks.
So, couldn't say it better myself, but you do sound like some of the Michigan football coaches as spring practices are unrolling here with some of the coach speak and cliches that are always flying out this time of the year. So I like that you're embracing it.
I am. Everybody, we've talked about 50 players. They've all had wonderful springs. Everybody's taken the next step. They look bigger, faster, stronger. It's amazing how every team, just like Miguel Cabrera, right? Every spring you can count on him showing up in the best shape of his
life, baby.
And that's where we're at. But it's spring football, right? That's what this time of year is. And truthfully, that is the case, right? We talked to guys like Mason Curtis, who was playing at 180 last year. He's up to 191. Or Dom Nichols, who's put on more weight on the edge or something. We don't need to bore you with all or Fred Moore. He's on the baked potato diet, he called it. He also put on 11 pounds, but that's the end of the dietary and nutrition portion of this episode. And plus, I think we wanted to start with hoops anyway. Here's a brief preview, reset, whatever you want to call it. We got 3 thoughts about hoops, the end of the year, the beginning of the portal, and what's left in the portal. We'll take a quick break, then a few thoughts on football. But right, Andrew, headed back to basketball.
Yeah. We'll get right into it here in a second. But, football we'll keep a big picture for you. And we have so much time to dive into all the X's and O's and, big picture stuff and details and all the stuff. So we'll kind of just, share a little bit of thoughts on offense, a little bit of thoughts on defense. But first, we got to talk hoops because we haven't talked to these guys since the Michigan basketball season came to an end in the Sweet 16 against Auburn. It looked like the Wolverines might steal that game. And then all of a sudden, Auburn looks like, the Auburn that we saw for much of the year. Obviously, since then, we know that they fell to Florida in the Final Four after beating Michigan State in the Elite Eight. But throwing it back to that time, Tony, it's undeniable that this was a great success in year one under Dusty May. But, looking forward a little bit, what's your biggest takeaway from what you saw and how it will translate for this Michigan basketball program going forward? Because, you were seeing it in the transfer portal and stuff now that they have selling points.
Yes, before year one, I guess in what you could call Dusty May's year 0, they were selling hope. And now it took 1 year and they are selling results. And I would say that is my biggest takeaway, is that the expectation in Ann Arbor is once again set. It doesn't mean that you're going to hang banners every year. It doesn't mean you're going to make deep runs in March. But it means that everything you need to do is there in Ann Arbor. When Dusty May signed his extension, actually, I'm not sure technically if it's yet been put pen to paper, but the MOU is still in place. I'm still waiting on the final numbers. But when he and Michigan agreed in principle to the contract extension, the understanding came with it that he would have NIL resources to work with. And that might be getting a little ahead because we're about to talk about the guys he landed in a minute here. But that's just sort of the takeaway, is that in year one, he was able to bring in all these guys, an entirely new staff, players from lower levels who you can sell that, hey, we will train you and you can perform at this power conference level immediately, whether that be Danny Wolf, who is expected to be a first-round NBA pick, or Reuben Jones, who never quite clicked, but still was a connector. And with him moving to the starting lineup, that helped send a jolt into the Wolverines this year. Or whether it be, hey, if things aren't working for you where you're at, you can come and transfer parallel levels, and we're going to take your game to the next level. Trey Donaldson, I know he's not here anymore, but sort of bring someone in like that. Roddy Gale, who had a fantastic finish to the season, even though it wasn't what he had hoped it would be for much of the year. And that's the rest of it, right? Even when things aren't going right, we're still going to support you. We're still going to have our arms around you, right? And you can point to Roddy's season and say, look, this guy didn't do what we expected him to do for 30 games. But the night we needed him most, he was our best player. And we believe that you can be that too, whoever you is, right? Whatever transfer you're selling that vision to. So second place finish in the deepest by total amount of teams, Big Ten conference there's ever been, winning the Big Ten tournament. That was 3 quad ones wins in a row, meaning you're playing some good ball in March, and then winning a couple games in March Madness, going to the second weekend, getting that first extended run into the tournament in 3 years. And so an A+ year one for Dusty, 8 wins to 27 wins. A fun group, a good mannered group, right? Respectable, did things the right way, played for one another. I mean, I think 5 or 6 different guys ended up leading this team in scoring at some point. It was often Vlad, but it was not always Vlad. It could be Danny. It could be Trey. It could be Namari. It could be Roddy. I think one night it was Will Cheddar. And so just depth, belief, culture, it all returned to Ann Arbor this year.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't go without, talking about this season without discussing Dusty's, I think the best word would be comfortability navigating the transfer portal, right? Like, he came in and he said, we're going to find guys who, we can identify. And identifying and convincing them to come is the name of the game in the transfer portal. And look who he found. Obviously he had Vlad come with him. That was huge. It sets the floor for the ceiling. But finding a guy like Danny Wolf, finding a guy like Trey Donaldson, and now, 2, 3, 4, 5 days after the season ended, they're already, completely rebuilding, reshaping the roster. And, there's so many coaches and a lot of old school coaches. You look around the country and it's just like, it seems that, I'm thinking of a specific coach up the road in a program in East Lansing, just seems to weigh on them. Like, they don't enjoy that. But Dusty just seems so comfortable with it, right? Like, hey, so-and-so, we'll recap all the names of people coming in and who's going out in a second here. But, real quick, that doesn't seem to stress him out, right? It's almost like he's like playing free agency on Madden. It's like kind of fun. Like, hey, he's going out. We're bringing another guy in. And he looks at it as an opportunity and less so as like this weight on his shoulders.
It's a great point. It's a really great point, Andrew. And I mean, I think part of it, and Tom Izzo always jokes about everybody calling him old, but Dusty is in his 40s. And Tom is in his 70s, right? I mean, it's just the eras that they grew up in and came up in. And sure, Dusty, he started in the 90s and early 2000s when college basketball was nothing like this. But he's still young enough. I mean, he was 44 or 43 when the transfer portal started like changing, like, and you could immediately transfer an NIL in 2021, right? So Izzo was 67. I mean, Tom Izzo had a 35-year career, and then things changed. He's like, man, like counting his assistant years. He's like, man, do I really want to do this? And he's like, look, I've won a lot. I want to do it my way. But Dusty's like, oh, this is the best way to win now? Sweet, let's do it. I mean, he talks about it all the time. He's a basketball junkie. He looks at offensive coaches, defensive coaches, NBA coaches, listens to the podcasts on 2X, you name it. We've all heard the stories. But it's true. This isn't just coach speak, or this isn't just cliche. This is actually what he does. I mean, I was talking to some people this last week who jokingly were concerned if he had slept since the season ended, right? I mean, he is getting after it like that. And that's exactly what you want for the guy in charge of your program. And I think now's a good chance for you to set the stage of, some of these stars who Michigan has seemingly landed. That's not an accident. That doesn't just you don't just get some of the very best available players in the transfer portal unless you have a clear vision, a clear message, and buy-in from people on your roster, previously on your roster. And I mean, again, I was speaking to someone around the program, someone else actually, and they were saying, I joked about how I was like, I've seen you guys on the top 5 of like 35 different transfers, top 5, right? I mean, it feels like every single list I see coming out, yeah, Michigan's in the top 5, Michigan's in the top 5. And then this person told me, he's like, honestly, that's how it's been. He's like, as soon as we make contact, they tell us we're in the top 5. And I mean, that's credit to Dusty.
I mean, Michigan has the brand to sell too, right? It makes sense. They have the Laker-esque looking yellow jerseys that pop. They have the Block M, they have the Jordan gear, right? Like, and they have a cool coach in Dusty who, can appeal to these younger guys. But, the thing about college basketball where it's at right now, which I kind of like, is there's these different ways to do it. Like Calvin Sampson is much more Izzo than he is Dusty May, right? Like he's still grabbing guys in the portal, but he likes to do it his way, old school. He's in the championship game. Versus you have Michigan who's, racking up portal guys and who, you want to bet against them next year. There's just different ways to do it. And I think that's cool. and a little bit more like, old school college football, where you have the Big 12 does it their way, the SEC does it their way, the Pac-12, the Big 10. It kind of has that feel still in college basketball because there's so many teams. You can do it different ways. And it seems, I'm not going to say there's one way that's always better than the other, but the way you'd want to be doing it how Dusty's doing right now, because look at these results. You have the whiplash immediately after the season ends with Sam Walters and Justin Pippen. Pippen was actually before the season, but Walters, Howard announced that they're hitting the portal. And then, shocker, Trey Donaldson hits the portal. But obviously, Michigan's losing Danny Wolf as well, most likely to the NBA. And Vlad Golden's going to be heading to the NBA, maybe EuroLeague, but he's out of eligibility. So that's who's going out. But, before all those guys were even, out the door, you have Elliot Cadeau, a huge name point guard from North Carolina, not necessarily a prolific scorer, 9 points a game, but 6.2 assists per game as a sophomore. Huge get right off the bat in the portal. Then Michigan goes out and gets Morez Johnson from Illinois, 7 points, 6.7 rebounds, just a great, tough presence down low, shooting 64% from the field, total. That shows you he's getting some easy looks and is going to be a force down. And Michigan obviously showed that they can play with, 1, 2 big guys down there pretty easily. And then the biggest fish of them all, Yaxel Lendeborg from UAB, number 1 player in the entire portal, also declared for the NBA as well. But, that seems a little bit more to test the waters. It seems to be that, you wouldn't commit to Michigan unless you at least thought that you might do that. So something to watch, surely, but it seems like he's going to be coming to Ann Arbor as well. He averaged 17.7 points, 11.4 rebounds, and 4.2 assists last year. So pretty good free throw shooter, 36% on threes, just 2 attempts per game. But that's the big fish there. And by all accounts, they're not done, right? So the roster's starting to take shape, but it's been a busy, I'm losing track of time. Wasn't last weekend the Elite Eight? So it's like a little over a week, and they've already put together these 3 huge names, which shows you not only that they were prepared, they were working on this as the season was happening, most likely. They had these names identified, maybe not Dusty, but someone on the staff, and they've got money to make this stuff happen.
And you need all 3 components, right? You can't only have a couple of them in order to get it across the finish line. And if you just want to look into the individual players a little bit more, you can totally see the vision of what Michigan's trying to do here. Cadeau is, while he's a different player, he is Trey Donaldson. He's the point guard. He's the lead guard. And what I asked Dusty about multiple times, and they would sort of talk around it by saying, hey, we think Danny is sort of a ball handler and a facilitator as well, was that, Trey Donaldson, electric player. He had a lot of wonderful moments in his 1 year in Ann Arbor. I never got the vibe that he was a true lead guard, right? Like the guy who can make everyone else better, who is a pass first guard. Like that just wasn't his style. It's not that he was necessarily shoot first, but it was just, he was always kind of reading, and there just wasn't enough instinct, right? He's just, this guy's an athlete. Trey Donaldson, that's how I would describe him. He is a wonderful athlete who played point guard. Elliot Cadeau is a point guard. This dude, his vision, his passing ability. Now he can get a little out of hand. I think he might have led the ACC in turnovers. He averaged like 3.1 a game, but still 6.2 to 3.1. That's a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. And that's the mark you want your starting guard to be at least. And anything better than that is obviously even better. And then you go to Morez Johnson, the big from Illinois. Now he was actually out the one game that Michigan played that Illinois when they actually got hammered at home. They lost by 20 to the Illini last year. And so we didn't get to see Johnson that day. But he had some really big games this year. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think he put up something like 17 against MSU. He had like 20 and 11 another game in the year. So he was a top 30 recruit. He was committed to Illinois since he was a sophomore, and he was the top player in the state. And so for Michigan to pull someone like that who had ties to their program is obviously a really good get. But I was told he is not going to just be a 5. He will be a 4 and a 5, which is why I'm led to believe there is probably another 5 coming in the portal some way, because Will Cheddar, if he returns, is not a true 5. Yaxel Lendeborg, who I'm going to get to more in a minute, even if he does forego the NBA and opts to come to Ann Arbor, he's not a 5. He's 6'9" as well. And so Michigan is looking for more of a true 5, but Johnson can play it. This dude shot like 64%. He was like 80% on dunks and layups or something. I mean, he lived around the basket, so he certainly can play the 5. But you said it. The big fish is Lendeborg. Someone affiliated with the program alluded to me that he would be the Danny Wolf replacement, right? He is Danny Wolf light. He can pass it. He can shoot it. He can put the ball on the deck. He's a bigger and he's a mismatch. Now he's not 7 foot 250, but he's 6'9", 240. That's darn good. That's a really good size to still average. I mean, better than three assists a game. So already it looks like they've replaced Donaldson, Wolf, and Golden. And those were their 3 best players. Now you can't always be certain that it's all going to fit as perfectly as you think it does in your mind, but a 5-star, a former top 30 player, and the number 1 available player in the portal to get them all in less than 7 days' time. I mean, there's not a program in America, I would say, that has had a better start to the transfer portal than Michigan.
Yeah, and it's clear that, you remember when Dusty got hired and he talked about, we want to be exciting, we want to play fast pace, we want to run. That's why you get a guy like Cadeau, right? He's going to get that fast break humming. He's going to really play at a pace and it seems like that's Dusty's preferred style of play. Now you get Johnson and Lendeborg. That's a little more athletic than they were with, Vlad and Danny. I think both guys are, if you're comparing apples to apples with the 2 guys there, I think both would be slightly better athletes. And depends on your definition of athleticism, right? I mean, Danny, his coordination is absurd for his size, but, true, jumping and running, I think you're upgrading there. So you're probably looking at a team that's going to get up and down the floor a little bit more. But other than that, I mean, we still have the to be determined guys of Nimari Burnett. It feels like he's been playing college basketball for 7 years, but he still has a year of eligibility. And obviously Roddy Gale Jr., who infamously basically got Michigan to the Sweet 16 with his epic second round game there. It's going to be a wait and see thing. Nothing's locked in yet as far as that. We haven't heard for sure one way or the other. Cheddar's kind of right in the same boat. He seems to want to come back and want to give it another go. I think he'll be on the team, right?
I'm expecting Will Cheddar back.
But you just never know, right? You never know.
There's a lot of moving parts, but Will told me post after the game that he 100% plans on coming back, and Roddy said the same. Nimari, I did not get to catch up with after the loss to Auburn. He was at the podium, and then we ran out of time.
And let's just say the quiet part out loud. We talked about it pre-show. Is these guys are professionals now. They're getting paid, so there is somewhat of a degree of is Michigan going to have the money to pay these guys? Is Michigan going to have the scholarship roster spot for them? So those are conversations that are being had. We don't know if those are being had about those specific guys. We're not in the room, but you have to put a question mark next to anybody who hasn't basically committed a week ago, right? Like these 3 guys, Cadeau, Johnson, and Yaxel, I think those 3 guys you can pretty much count on being part of the team. Anyone else, you just don't know in today's day and age. No one expects some of these transfers, so that's why we talk about them in this way.
And for what it's worth, Lendeborg told ESPN that he is an 80-20 NBA lean right now, as in it is more likely than not that he goes to the NBA and not Ann Arbor. That would really shake things up for Michigan. But this is just my read on it. I think Michigan is more confident. I don't know how you can be more confident than what the person is telling you.
They might know what the scouts are saying, right?
Exactly. The staff has... I was talking to someone the other day who told me the reason they don't believe that Danny's coming back is because they were talking to an NBA exec who said they have been in circle talk that Danny's somewhere right around 20. I was looking at mocks. I've seen 18, 23, 24. This person told someone on Michigan staff they would be surprised if Danny got past 20, right? So you rely on the relationships with people at the upper levels and what they think the feedback they will hear. The understanding was Danny's going to be hearing good feedback. He's probably going to test it. But I think Lendeborg actually does end in Ann Arbor next year. And so, what more
are these college programs at a spot for these guys to prove themselves, right? And, Lendeborg was at UAB last year, right? You're telling me he's not going to be seen more on Michigan this year? Look at Danny Wolf. He was obviously on, they took the chains off him in this year's offense, but you're telling me he was some hugely different player last year who wasn't capable of any of this stuff? I'm sure that you put the flashlight on him and he shines a little bit, right? So I think that's the selling point that these big programs can offer now is like, dude, come play for us. People will see you. And that second round grade turns into a end of first round grade. You have a guaranteed contract. That's the selling point, right?
Exactly. And by the by, here's $1.5 million in the meantime, right? Here is a salary that is more than a second round contract would get. So we'll pay you more in the first year than you would get in the NBA. And then you get drafted higher, so you earn a better, so it's supposed to be a win-win-win. A win for the player now, a win for the team now, a win for the player in the future. And I could see that. I could very easily foresee that. As far as the rest of this portal goes for Michigan, still looking to add a big man to the rotation. I would probably, one spot they may be looking is at UCLA. Ade Mara, he's 7'3", 240, from Spain. So that checks a lot of the boxes.
That dude has game.
Liked.
I watched him decimate Michigan State in that game in the winter at UCLA at Pauley Pavilion. He basically won that game for UCLA against Michigan State when I was watching for work. So that guy has game.
Yeah, no, and he only started like one game last year. He was putting up like 6 or 7 points and 4 rebounds, but this is in 13 minutes a game.
He wasn't consistent. He wasn't consistent, right? He flashed signs of like, whoa.
Yep. No. And Michigan is more than welcome to, or more than willing to take on a project like that and just build up its depth in the front court. And then, while I don't have a name specifically, I would expect Michigan to look to add more shooting, right? Because Cadeau, who comes in for Donaldson, that is a downgrade shooting. Sam Walters has left. That is a downgrade shooting. Vlad Golden cannot shoot or could shoot better than Morez Johnson. That's a downgrade. Danny Wolf, slightly better shooter than Yaxel Lendeborg. That's a downgrade, right? And so, that's every spot, right? I would expect Michigan to add or look to add a couple players, specifically at that 2-3 wing spot, who are 35 plus from long range, just because, Namari coming back would be huge for that. And you would figure that Roddy Gale's going to shoot better than 22% from long range next year, but you want to add someone who's a known commodity, right? And so I think that would be. And then if you do that, you also got, you got Trey McKinney coming in, who's a McDonald's All-American. If you bring back the others, Gale and Namari, you land one more center. So then you got 4 bigs. You got Johnson, this center to be named, Cheddar, and Lendeborg should he come. And then, at the guard, you got Elliot Cadeau, LJ Kaysen, Trey McKinney. Then you got Burnett, Gale, maybe another 3. I think they need a true wing, right? Like that 6'7" guy, like the Reuben Jones.
I don't know how much they got to play all these guys. Right? We're talking about, if Gale and Burnett both come back, we're talking Gale, Burnett, Cadeau, Kaysen, right? And then you have Johnson, Lendeborg. Whom else am I forgetting? Cheddar, and McKinney.
Then another big.
And the other, so that's like, we're getting to, 9, 10, 11 guys here. So I don't know. I could see them getting a couple guys around the edge, but it seems like those are the big 3 fish, right? I can't see them going out and getting another like top 20 guy.
I don't think they're going to add anybody else of that ilk quite at that level. There's just only so many players and a lot
there's
of the
only
top
so many
ones
minutes you
signed,
can promise, right? That's the biggest selling point is minutes. What can you promise?
Yeah, but this staff they try not to promise roles, rotations. They promise vision, right? Like they told Roddy Gale, like, hey, you'll probably be a starter or maybe, right? Or not, right? But you're still going to be a big piece of this puzzle. Hard to say, but when I was talking to someone the day before they signed Lendeborg, when they were hoping that's where that was headed and felt pretty good about it, they said that they were expecting 2 to 3 more, right? And that's only 1. So they already had Johnson, they already had Cadeau, and they said 2 to 3 more. That leads me to think there's 2 more coming.
Yeah.
Or if they have it their way.
Or as you would say, 1 to 2 more, because there was 2 to 3, so now 1 to 2 more. It could be 1, It could be 2.
There you go.
All right, man, let's take a quick break. I think we kind of covered the basketball stuff for now. I'm sure there'll be other stuff we can look at. Maybe we can look at the roster further once things settle down a little bit more. We're going to take a quick break and then get to some spring football talk here, because it's been a while since we talked some football. So we'll talk to you guys quickly after this break. Welcome back, and we are halfway, at least past spring football here. So we're making our way through it, and it can be a bit of a grind sometimes because you just don't know what to take from it. But you can read between the lines, and like Tony said at the start of the show, everybody's having the greatest spring in their lives. Everybody's up 10 pounds, and you kind of have to parse through things here and there. which Tony has become a pro at because Michigan football program, not exactly known for being an open book of information as far as giving out state secrets. So he's become an expert at that. So Tony, quarterback update for me first here. So what do we know about the quarterback situation? Obviously, Mikey Keene came in from Fresno State. Of course, we have Underwood from Belleville just down the road here, highly touted. But what are you hearing about the quarterback situation?
Well, they are being very quiet about it, but the only two names that we are hearing are practicing right now are Bryce Underwood and Jaden Davis. The other two quarterbacks, scholarship quarterbacks on the roster are, as you just said, Mikey Keene and last year's starter, Davis Warren, but he tore his ACL in the ReliaQuest. Well, he was last year's starter. He started the season as a starter, lost the job, then ended the season as a starter. I still refer to him as last year's starter primarily. He tore his ACL against Alabama, and I mean, he's still fully on the mend. That was not even 4 full months ago. That was about 100 days ago, almost to the day. And so that's usually at least 6 months, sometimes 9, sometimes 12. I mean, just look at Rod Moore. Rod Moore tore his ACL this time last year, and there's still no timetable. They are expecting him to play this year, but he's not. I mean, he is not in pads. It doesn't sound like he's not going through all the hits and anything like that by a long shot, right? So as far as quarterback, that brings it just to the two. Bryce Underwood, who everybody in the program, around the program, tangentially affiliated with the program, has heard of the program. That's who everybody wants, right? I mean, he is the most highly regarded prospect that has ever come to Michigan in any sport at any time. That's not hyperbole. That is the fact of the matter. And he is seen as a potential number 1 overall draft pick in 3 years in the NFL already, and he cannot vote. He's 17 years old still until the end of the summer, and that's the type of hype we're talking about. But he's got all the skill set to warrant it, right? Big arm. I mean, he's tall. He's 6'4". He's 230. I mean, he looks like Cam Newton walking around. I mean, when he walked past me, I remember in Tampa, when he walked past me, and we're all standing in the room for a scrum. He's walking out of the locker room. It looked like someone from the edge room. I mean, that is what defensive ends look like. And he is about to be a true freshman quarterback. So he looks the part coming off the bus. And then you hear the stories about the ball placement, about the arm strength, about his willingness to stay in the pocket and yet still feel the pressure and take off and outrun people. But also, Ron Bellamy, the wide receivers coach, was praising Jaden Davis today as well. Now, Ron is known to praise just about everybody, but he said, I mean, there was a clear Jaden Davis had a big step to take, right? He's not arriving like Bryce Underwood, where people think like, oh, you're just going to be a Big Ten starter day one. Now the fans did, because at one point he was a fringe 5-star guy. He was like top 30. He ended as a 4-star recruit. But when I spoke to the former offensive coordinator, Kirk Campbell, this was going into like the Rose Bowl practice, right? So before Jaden Davis is an early enrollee, and he came to get those practice reps that Bryce was getting last season at the ReliaQuest Bowl. And I was talking about Davis. I mean, you could just tell he had a really long arm motion, and it just can't be that long if you're that short and you're at this level. And Campbell said that's an off-season project. Now they have been working on that with him for more than a year. They said it's shortened. It seems to be improved, and he is extremely confident this season. And as I think about it, kind of why wouldn't he be? Here is a guy who, for my money, I would have thought would have been in the portal not long after the ReliaQuest Bowl, right? Because, I mean, Michigan was desperate for any answer at quarterback last year, and they went from Warren to Orji, who could not complete a forward pass, to Tuttle, who literally retired from the sport. Right? I mean, they were just so desperate for anything, yet they never turned to Jaden Davis, even when they could have kept his red shirt, right? It was late enough in the year. He could have played a game or two, and he still would have been fine. And so I would have thought he would have sought greener pastures, but credit to him for wanting to stick it out. And now you got a couple injuries to a couple senior quarterbacks ahead of you, and it's just you and a true freshman battling out for this job. And so that's where the quarterback job stands right now.
Lots to unpack there, obviously, and we'll continue to monitor that. Let's do a recurring segment. I'm throwing this on you now. I'm not giving you any prep. I'll ask you every week that we talk football. Who's the quarterback week 1?
Bryce Underwood.
Okay. We'll circle back, and if you hear anything else, we'll continue to ask you, because that's what everyone wants to know. And then I could at least say I did my job, and I at least asked you who the quarterback was going to be. One big takeaway from the offensive side of the ball. I'll keep it simple. What are you seeing from spring, and what do you think people are going to be talking about as we kind of get closer to the fall coming up here?
Well, what people on the inside are talking about is sort of a revamped receiver room, and that's multiple pronged, right? But also just a revamped offense that should be stop me if you've heard this before, airing it out more, right? We've heard that a number of times over the past few years, right? J.J. McCarthy was said to have the big arm and he could do it, yet they were so dominant running the ball. They just didn't need to do it much. Then last year, Kirk Campbell promised us this would be an explosive offense. They were the only power team in America that did not have a 40-yard completion. I will go out on a limb and I will say that Michigan will have a 40-yard completion within the first 3 games this year. That's how much I think that the offensive line is improved, the quarterback play is improved, and the wide receivers are improved. Not to mention, I think a more proven, more proficient offensive coordinator. Chip Lindsey came in from North Carolina, where he has led top 3 draft picks like Drake May. He has had dynamic running backs like Amari and Hampton, who, if the Lions weren't in better shape at their running back position, I would be banging the table for them to take Amari and Hampton. Just put a note in this. He is going to be the best, I think, the best running back in this class. So just remember that. But Lindsey brings this, he buys into Schroen's idea of balance, right? Schroen wants to be smash mouth and he wants to have pass and run. I don't think that Lindsey really wants to smash, but he knows that the run game obviously helps. And he will do that, and to means to an end, and then that'll allow him to play with some of the fun weapons and open it up down the field. They added Donovan McCulley, who is a 6'5" wide receiver from Indiana. He redshirted last year, but the last full season he had like 750 yards, 6 touchdowns. He was a very productive player. Then they talked about, even if it's guys who didn't have the sophomore years they had hoped, Fred Moore, Samaj Morgan. That's another year in the offense. They have a more capable quarterback, you would think, throwing it to them. Donovan McCulley called this, quote, a wide receiver friendly offense. So you'd think there may be more opportunities, right? There's no Colston Loveland, who now he was certainly the best option. So you understood why they force fed him, but there's not going to just be a tight end who is demanding 8 targets a game, right? Marlon Klein is going to be, I think, really a really nice piece, but there's that aspect of it. There's the new offensive coordinator aspect of it. And then Rob Bellamy said, this is the deepest his wide receiver room has been since he's been in Ann Arbor. Last spring, they had 5 scholarship healthy bodies just to rotate at the position. And so the defensive backs weren't getting tested. Guys, you can't even run multiple 3 receiver sets at a time without someone else having to run 2 routes. You know what I mean? Like if these 3 guys go, then the next wave goes. There's only 2 starters or 2 scholarship guys for 3 roles. And so there's more depth. There's bigger bodies. There's a better quarterback. The offensive line is a little more cohesive. They are not bringing in a new, I'll try to keep it shorter winded. They were replacing every coach, right? They had replaced every single offensive lineman. There was just so much going on. There's more cohesion this year. That's the long answer, even longer.
Yeah. If you're a Michigan fan, you're probably going to want to see it before you're going to start to believe it with these receivers. You mentioned losing Loveland, because you could also spin that as a negative, right? Because that attention that was going to Loveland now can be diversified a little bit to the other receiving threats, right? Like he's not getting double teamed, right? So I think that, McCulley's a nice piece they brought in, and that was rumored even during the season. Shows you how messed up football was. I think was he on the sidelines for the Michigan game against Indiana, or it was during the season, right? He came out, was it against Michigan State? He was on the Michigan sidelines. That was long rumored, right?
Yeah. The ties. I can't report anything official about him being on the sideline. Maybe my brain is just mush after a full basketball season. I can't even remember.
I appreciate the honesty. But that's a total off point. Former quarterback, it's a nice piece to bring in. But I think that this, you got to hope they get schemed open more. But I think that the pressure is still going to be on this group, because you're losing some skill talent, and it's going to be, everyone's going to be asked to do a lot again. And like you said, I think the system will certainly help open things up a little bit. But it's going to be the position that everyone's looking at again for that Michigan offense, because we know they can run the ball. And maybe they'll start, you talk about modern philosophies on offense, right? Like what Lindsey wants to do, not looking to reinvent the wheel, but maybe you pass on first down so you can run on second down. Like you see the Lions do that all the time, right? The Lions will pass on first down and they'll run on third down because it's second and short, right? Or third and short. So
if it's 3rd and 4, the Lions are running 99% of the time.
Right. And how do you get there? Sometimes you have to pass on first down, or you run it on second. Pass on first down, you run it second, run it third. So I think just being a little more unpredictable is going to go a long way for this offense. But the receivers, in my mind, I think I'm with a lot of Michigan fans on this. Is like you got to show me something before I'm going to be ready to call this an explosive group after last year's infamous comments about it being an explosive offense and more explosive than the title title team. They just have a lot to overcome from that perspective. But
the word opportunity is what Ron Bellamy said. He said, hey, we haven't earned it. He's like, these guys got to prove it. There's going to be more opportunity this year.
Yeah.
I think it's just a slight philosophical change. He was talking about, hey, I mean, Jamar Browder is a freshman. He's 6'4", so he's kind of raw. Andrew Marsh is the highest rated incoming freshman receiver Michigan has landed since Donovan Peoples-Jones, right? So there are some guys. There's some size. There's some stuff to be excited about, but they got to do it. They got to show that they can do it. And Bellamy was talking about, with that size, turning the 50-50 balls into those are our balls, right? So they expect some jump balls this year.
For sure. Okay, we're getting near the end of the show here, but give me a thought on the defense as well. Much more of a known commodity. We know Michigan plays darn good defense pretty much all the time since, I don't know how far back you want to go. Maybe 2020 was the exception, but basically since Harbaugh got there, they've been, a tough unit to score the ball against. So more of the same this year?
Figures to be. I mean, if you're circling one thing, right, it is how do you replace Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, the best defensive tackle duo in the history of the school, and just all the things that having them on the line allows the rest of your defense to do, right? It masks things when one guy or two guys can just manhandle an offensive line. There's less that the offense isn't going to, unless you're Ohio State and with evidently no brain. Most people don't like to run into the teeth of 700 pounds of beef in the middle of the line, right? And that's what was going on last year. You just couldn't. So either you're running stretch plays or you're trying to get it, or you're trying to run screen passes just to get things to the outside. And Michigan's going to take your lunch money all day and tomorrow if you're playing into their hands. And so I'm looking at the interior of the line again. Now it is deep. It is deep, deep, deep. That's what Lou Esposito is talking about. They brought Rayshawn Benny back. They brought in guys like Trey Williams from Clemson, Damon Payne, who Lou Esposito likes to call Mr. Payne, from Alabama. He was a former Belleville standout. And then just some of those next guys up, Trey Pierce, Ike Iwana, and who am I for? And Oeta, right? That's six dudes. That's six dudes in the middle of the line. And then they were able to bring back Derek Moore, bring back TJ Guy. And then you have guys like Dom Nichols and Cam Brandt stepping up a year or what have you, into sort of, instead of the third line, they're sort of that second wave now, right? Where TJ Guy and Demo are the first wave. Now guys like Nichols and Brandt are the second wave. And so, I mean, that's 10 dudes. That's 10 dudes along that line who, I mean, these are not like, none of these guys are household names yet, but I would not be surprised if TJ Guy or Derek Moore, either or both, finished with 7, 8, 10 sacks. That's fully in the realm of possibility. And I think Rayshawn Benny takes that next step. This was a four-star guy who I know Michigan and Michigan State were really battling over. I'm pretty sure Ohio State was in on him too. I mean, this he's had to wait his turn. And then he suffered an injury, couple injuries over the past few years, but be ready for him.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe just a little less top end talent with Will Johnson, Mason Graham, and Kenneth Grant going out the door, but what they're losing in that is maybe making up a little more depth, especially on the interior, because that was, Reiner Saban, our former host on the show here, now writing Lions, who check out his content. He's doing great stuff over there. He was always banging the drum like, dude, look at they have no depth. Like Graham and Grant are gassed because they're playing every snap. They could maybe piece it together for, Ohio State by the end of the year. They're basically in great shape and, the rivalry game, but to do that over a season, they couldn't do it necessarily. So maybe losing a little bit of that top, blue chip level talent, but what they're losing in that and making up for in depth is probably what they're selling, right?
100%. If you remember, I mean, the national title year in 2023, they called it the rally group, right? I mean, it was four plays, and they would just bring in rotations and waves of guys. I mean, Kenneth Grant did not start, right? It was Mason Graham and Chris Jenkins, and then KG would be coming in with Rayshawn Benny. And so, I mean, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I mean, that would have been Braden McGregor and Jalen Harrell were the starting edges on that team, yet neither of them were in on the game-changing play against Alabama when they it was Josiah Stewart and Demo who were on the edges against Alabama when they got that famous, I should say, 4th and goal stop to beat the Tide and go to the national championship game. And so, and that's the whole thing, right? It's not about first string, second. It's just dudes. We got dudes across the line. We got depth, and you're going to earn your spot. You're going to earn your role, and we're going to put you in positions to succeed. And there were not enough bodies last year to do that initially. And then when you have less depth and new coaching philosophies, they're similar, but I mean, every single position coach, Lamar Morgan, Brian Jean-Marie, Lou Esposito, and Wink Martindale, every single defense coach on the defense was new. And so you're working on all these things. You got way less depth. It's just not going to look the same. Then you got to play Texas. You got to play USC. You got to play an Indiana who was a better offense. You had to play Oregon, right? I mean, they were playing some really tough teams, and it all added up to just too much early on. But they found their form by the end of the year, and they are trying to bring that momentum into this season.
Totally. So, all right, we'll probably wrap it up here, but the one thing I want to do real quick is just read off the schedule, because this is right where in every podcast I listen to, I'm like, wait a minute, what's Michigan's schedule next year? So 2025 schedule, a little refresher for you guys. So first game of the year is opening up at the Big House against New Mexico. Then they go to Oklahoma. Obviously, that's going to be one circled, probably game day candidate, right? Then they host Central, go to Nebraska, host Wisconsin, go to USC, host Washington, play at Michigan State, host Purdue, play at Northwestern, at Maryland, and then finish the season at the Big House with the Buckeyes. So just running it through there, you obviously can just Google that real quick if you want to see it in front of you as well. But I always love to run through that just to, we'll be thinking about it a lot, and some huge games to circle on the calendar this year. I mean, again, the one good thing about the expanded conferences in college football is you're going to have good matchups and fun matchups, right? Here's the thing. You have to just get in. I mean, we saw the first year in the 12-team playoff. Michigan knows what it has to do. If you beat Oklahoma, you can lose to Nebraska. You can lose to Wisconsin or USC. You have to go 2-1 in that stretch, right? And then maybe you have another loss afforded to you throughout the year, because if Michigan beats Oklahoma and they beat, 10 out of those 11 teams, or 9 out of those 11 teams to go 10-2, they're in the dance. It's not that hard. It's not going to be hard for Michigan to make the 12-team playoff. If they're 10-2, 9-3, they're going to get a look because they're Michigan, and because this schedule they're going to be playing every year. Yeah.
10-2, they're in for sure. 9-3, you figured they'd be right on that border. It depends what the 3 losses are.
Now, how good is Oklahoma going to be? I mean, obviously winning at Oklahoma is tough, but they were not that great last year, right? And they're kind of in between. They probably weren't all that different than Michigan last year, to be honest. Both kind of in the early stages of a new administration, but there will be plenty of time to talk about that. I'm already getting excited. It's snowing today. It's April. We're still not even to, the warmer weather, but football is the best.
We're not talking John Mateer, the Washington State transfer who's looking to take the Sooners back to the promised land.
Listen, I'm ready for it, man. I can't wait.
I know. We'll get there.
So, well, thank you to everybody who tuned in to this basketball and football edition. We just mentioned we're getting near that football time of the year. I'd be stunned if there's not more basketball news to get to over the next few weeks. Probably take a break sometime in the summer, maybe around late May, June time. I am going to my honeymoon around Memorial Day, so maybe that'd be a natural break for us. But so we'll be, long story short, we'll be podcasting with you guys right up until, the summer months here. So stay with us, follow us on, social media. Make sure to check out Tony's writing on freep.com/sports. Booting out content like nobody's business still. So thank you to Tony for that. Obviously, thank you to our sports editor, Bill Bradley, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery-Nichols, and our editor for the podcast, the boots on the ground, Robin Chan, man. We could not do it without him, so he's a beast. Thank you to everybody, and we will talk to you guys fairly shortly here.